For a long time, Texas has been considered a political puzzle, a state Democrats believe is just one election away from turning blue. Every few years, predictions resurface with confidence, charts, and analysis showing that demographics, trends, and momentum will finally deliver the Lone Star State into Democratic hands. This time, they say, the math will work. This time, everything will fall into place. But elections are never won on predictions. They are won on trust, on respect, and on understanding the voters. And once again, Texas refused to follow the script written for it. This refusal is what makes the Jasmine Crockett controversy more than just another viral political moment. It is not about one comment, one accusation, or one headline. It is about a deeper misunderstanding, a growing gap between the way political elites view voters and how voters actually perceive themselves. The controversy did not begin with legislation or voting records. It began with language, tone, and attitude. Jasmine Crockett's comments about Hispanic voters struck a nerve across Texas. Not because her words were misunderstood, but because the voters understood exactly what she meant. The remarks did not sound like a leader seeking answers or reflecting on why voters made the choices they did. They sounded frustrated. They sounded judgmental. They sounded like blame. Instead of curiosity, there was criticism. Instead of reflection, there was a lecture. Instead of asking why Latino voters supported Donald Trump, the implication was that those voters had made a mistake, and that they needed to be corrected. In Texas, that implication matters. Latino voters are not a political accessory. They are not a guaranteed block. They are business owners, oil field workers, veterans, police officers, small-town mayors, church leaders, and parents. Many of them do not vote out of party loyalty, they vote out of lived experience. When they hear criticism instead of respect, they do not feel persuaded, they feel dismissed. That is the context in which Republican Congressman Brandon Gil responded. He did not frame his criticism as partisan outrage. He framed it as reality. As a fellow Texan, he spoke from the perspective of someone who understands the mindset of voters who feel talked down to. He said that demonizing your own potential voters is not boldness. It is desperation. According to Gil, the moment a politician begins blaming voters for election losses, they reveal something essential: they are no longer interested in accountability. They are no longer asking what went wrong with their message. Instead, they assume the public owes them agreement. Texas, he argued, does not work that way. This is not a state confused about its identity. Texas knows who it is. Texas knows what it values: independence, skepticism of authority, cultural pride, and a deep distrust of political elites who speak about voters instead of listening to them. Gil reminded viewers that Donald Trump did not narrowly win Texas. He won by 14 points, a decisive, unmistakable statement. And that victory came from a state that is nearly 40% Latino. For years, Democrats assumed those numbers guaranteed an inevitable shift. They believed that if they waited long enough, Texas would eventually conform to expectations. But voters do not behave like statistics. They respond to respect. They respond to tone. They respond to authenticity. Colin Allred tried to reshape Texas politics and failed. Beto O'Rourke turned the state into a national fundraising spectacle and failed. And in Gil's assessment, Jasmine Crockett represents the continuation of the same misunderstanding, that voters must eventually align with the message, rather than the message aligning with voters. Gil described Texas as a place where disagreement is tolerated, but condescension is not. Where sharp rhetoric without accountability quickly loses credibility. And where political theater is often mistaken for leadership. That criticism alone would have been enough to fuel days of debate. But then came the moment that many critics consider the most damaging, the Jeffrey Epstein accusation. During a public exchange, Crockett referenced campaign donations linked to someone named Jeffrey Epstein. In politics, few names are more loaded or more damaging. The audience reaction was instantaneous. The implication was understood immediately. Later, Crockett attempted to clarify. She said she never explicitly referred to the infamous Jeffrey Epstein. She argued that multiple individuals share the same name and that her team had relied on publicly available information in real time. Her defense framed the moment as a lesson about misinformation, how quickly assumptions can spread when facts are not confirmed. But Gil rejected that explanation. He argued that politics never exists in a vacuum. Names carry meaning. Context matters. When a public figure uses a name like Jeffrey Epstein, they are fully aware of the mental shortcut the public will take. The harm is done the moment the name is introduced. Even if corrected later, the association lingers, suspicion remains, and trust erodes. Gil pointed out that campaign finance records are not hidden. Federal Election Commission data is publicly accessible. The facts could have been verified. But instead, Crockett chose speed over accuracy, narrative over nuance, and impact over integrity. And to Gil, this was not an isolated mistake. It fit a broader pattern, the same pattern seen in her comments about Latino Texans: lead with accusation, frame the story, clarify later. Texas voters notice these patterns. They recognize when narratives are pushed artificially. They understand when controversy is manufactured. And once trust is broken, it is nearly impossible to rebuild. As scrutiny intensified, attention shifted from rhetoric to behavior. Reports revealed that approximately $75,000 in campaign funds had been spent on luxury travel: Martha's Vineyard, Las Vegas, New York City, Chicago. To Gil, this was not merely about spending. It was about symbolism, the distance between Crockett and the everyday Texans she claims to represent. Gil highlighted what many voters saw as a glaring contradiction. Crockett has defended the defund the police movement, a stance that alarms many Texans concerned about safety. Yet she travels with private security funded by campaign donations. Protecting yourself is reasonable. Advocating reduced protection for ordinary citizens while ensuring elite protection for yourself is not. It sends a message voters cannot ignore. It reinforces the perception that politicians live by different rules, shielded from consequences. In Texas, that perception is political poison. Gil went further, describing Crockett as one of the most pro-criminal candidates Democrats could put forward. He argued her positions weaken law enforcement, undermine Second Amendment rights, and prioritize ideology over public safety. Whether one agrees or disagrees, the accusation resonated because it aligned with a larger perception, that Crockett's politics appeal more to national activists than to everyday Texans. As the interview concluded, the tone shifted from confrontation to reflection. Gil said Texas voters are not demanding perfection, they demand sincerity. They want leaders who verify facts before making accusations. Leaders who accept responsibility instead of shifting blame. Leaders who understand voters are not obstacles, but the foundation of democracy. In Gil's assessment, Jasmine Crockett embodies the opposite approach. Her style is driven by confrontation instead of connection, controversy instead of clarity, narrative instead of understanding. And in his view, that is why she has no viable path to victory in Texas. The cameras eventually moved on. The segment ended. But the implications remained. Maybe Texas isn't refusing to turn blue because demographics failed to cooperate. Maybe it's not because voters are uninformed. Maybe it's not because messaging needs tweaking. Maybe it's because voters recognize when they are being talked down to. And maybe, just maybe, blaming the electorate is not a strategy at all, but the clearest admission that a political movement has lost touch with the people it hopes to lead. The lessons of Texas are clear. Elections are not predictions. They are conversations. They are relationships. They are trust built over time, or lost in a single remark. And as long as politicians underestimate voters, the Lone Star State will continue to defy expectations, reminding everyone that respect, honesty, and accountability matter far more than rhetoric, assumptions, or narratives.